Now, we reported at the top of the show that transition sources told us that Rudy Giuliani was no longer under consideration to be President-elect Trump's Secretary of State, and now the transition has put out a statement saying that Giuliani removed his name from consideration for any position in the Trump administration. Trump, in the statement, praised Giuliani and said he would have been an outstanding member of the cabinet in several roles, but respects his decision to remain in the private sector. Curious. For more, let's bring in our political panel. We have with us Washington Bureau Chief for USA Today, Susan Page, Associate Editor and columnist for Real Clear Politics, A.B. Stoddard, and CNN contributor Selena Zito. Thanks one and all for being here. Susan, let me start with you. Translate that for us. What happened here?
Well, Rudy Giuliani said he only wanted Secretary of State, no other job. He apparently meant it. Became clear he was not going to get the Secretary of State job. This statement being put out today gives him some face saving because it says he told Trump on November 29th that he wasn't interested in joining the administration. And so this makes it look a little less like he just wasn't able to get the job that he sought, and that some people thought he had a good shot at getting, given all his work for Trump during the campaign. He
was a stalwart, but I have to say, I had been hearing that he would have potentially confirmation problems on Capitol Hill because of all his business entanglements all over the world.
Even the Rudy fans among Trump's closest supporters who wanted him to have the job worried he couldn't be vetted and make it through confirmation with all those entanglements with overseas business dealings, the same kind of things that Donald Trump criticized Hillary Clinton for in the campaign. It just would have been a very difficult thicket for him. But it's interesting that if he's really been out of the running since November 29th, why have Trump surrogates come out and still used his name in the ever-expanding list when they've talked about it in the weeks and days since?
It's so strange. And Selena, I guess a guy like Rudy Giuliani is an accomplished man, a mayor. He can want what he wants, but I had been told that the Trump team offered him Attorney General. He didn't want it. Offered him Homeland Security. He didn't want it. I guess he had his sights set on the Secretary of State position.
Right. I think the last time we saw him was right around November 30th, 29th, 28th, somewhere around there. He had his last public appearance. He was asked about being Attorney General, and he said, no, that's Jeff Sessions. And he said, the only thing I really want is, Secretary of State. And then he just went radio silent. We haven't heard from him since.
The irony would be if one of his biggest defenders, Trump's biggest defenders during the campaign, does not get that job, and his biggest critic, Mitt Romney, does.
That would be interesting. Do you think that Mitt Romney actually still is in the hunt here?
I think we know from Donald Trump that Mitt Romney is still in the mix, although the fact that Donald Trump hasn't made an appointment yet indicates that he's still looking around a little. But I think we know with some degree of certainty that Romney is at least in the mix.
So let's talk about the fact that the Washington Post is reporting that Trump has picked the president and COO of Goldman Sachs as his National Economic Council director. His pick for Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin worked at Goldman for almost 2 decades. Obviously, senior strategist Steve Bannon also worked at Goldman Sachs. Listen to then-candidate Trump talking about Ted Cruz, vowing that he would still take on Goldman Sachs even after taking a loan from them.
So the nice part about me is that I don't have any of that stuff. I don't have it. I'm putting up my own. I'm not into Goldman Sachs. I don't care about Goldman Sachs.
There was a lot of stuff about Goldman Sachs having to do with Ted Cruz and then later on Hillary Clinton. Selena, you really know Trump supporters very well. You've been covering them very well for months and months and months. Do they care? Can Donald Trump flip-flop on the Goldman Sachs issue and upset them?
Yeah, there's very little that he can't flip-flop on. And you have to get inside the mind of the Trump voter. It wasn't always what he said, but it was how he said it, and it was because he was not a politician. And they trust him at this moment. I mean, there's this sort of, honeymoon period to be able to, to pick whoever he wants because they just trust his decision-making at this point.
He was so anti-Goldman Sachs, and in his last commercial, he actually had an image of Lloyd Blankfein, the CEO of Goldman Sachs, as an international cabal boogeyman.
Well, all roads lead back to Goldman Sachs, and none of us are surprised. But really, if you think about the voters who supported Trump, who would be bothered by that, or went to Bernie Sanders rallies and somehow brought themselves around to support Donald Trump, they're going to be disappointed if in a continuum. What'll happen with Trump is he'll get an excuse here and there, and he'll flip-flop here and there. And if it looks real swampy in a year, including his own business arrangements, then it could suddenly turn on him and people could say, this is exactly the kind of system we've always had. It was just a new face pretending to have a new system. But this could pile up and become an obvious criticism later on, that you always, in the end, are supporting people from Goldman Sachs and giving them good jobs of influence at the highest levels of government.
We've been talking a lot about Trump's cabinet. Tom Steyer was very critical of a couple potential picks there. Do you sense any confirmation problems for any of his picks so far, Susan?
Yeah, I think some of them will have problems because there is a vetting process. You don't just name someone to the cabinet. There's an investigative process that goes on that includes Democrats in the Senate as well as Republicans. And some of these figures have never served in public office before. They've never gone through this process before. I think always we find with the new administration somebody who has a problem we didn't expect, and turns out to be very daunting. Just think about Tom Daschle. Who would have guessed that Tom Daschle would not have been able to take the job he wanted to take at the beginning of the Obama administration because of something came out through vetting, but that happened.
And I broke that story, and I'll just tell you, one of the things that the reason he was in trouble was because he had not paid the taxes for this free driver that he got from a rich friend. And this is a whole cabinet full of rich guys and gals who I'm sure have lots of favors in there.
I mean, there's a potential of something like that happening very, very easily. And I don't, this is one of those instances where if those kinds of things come out, Trump voters are not going to like that. They don't want someone that way. If this person can be someone that can lead the government or can lead the Treasury and help create jobs, that's fine. But if there's someone who has this sort of entitlement or skirts the law just the way they perceive that the Clintons did, then Trump has a problem with his picks.
All right, we'll see what happens. To be continued. AB, Susan, Selena, thank you so much. Have a great weekend to all of you.